It is Memorial Day weekend. Summer is almost here, and it's time to do a deep dive into the offseason, how success changes the Orlando Magic, and how they get ready for a big offseason ahead. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 23rd. It will be May 24th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, it is part one of a Memorial Day weekend two-parter as we chat with Keith Smith of Spotrac about all the things the Orlando Magic can do this offseason. We'll start with what success changes for the Magic in the offseason and dive into a little bit about what they need and the needs they should be addressing this offseason. And then Monday, we will chat about how the Magic can use their cap room and then talk about extensions and what the new TV deal means for the Magic too. We'll correct some things that I got wrong on yesterday's episode of Locked On Magic. Before we do any of that, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, we got a lot to get to today, so I'm not going to spend much more time. Let's get to it with our friend Keith Smith of Spotrac. And we are now joined by our good friend taking a little bit of a break from the Eastern Conference Finals to talk some Orlando Magic basketball because, Keith, it's never too early to preview the 2025 Eastern Conference Finals. Keith Smith of Spotrac, how you doing, man?
I mean, if that's how it ends up, I'm going to be thrilled. I will be absolutely, happy as can be if that's the way it goes. This was such a fun time for a Magic season this year, being here in Orlando. Yes, I am a Celtics guy, but Orlando is home. It's been home for a very long time now. So it was so cool. Day of game one of the playoffs, I was at Publix and two different people. One was about kid, probably I'm going to guess about 13, 14 years old. And then one was a guy who was definitely closer to like my age. And they were both having similar conversations. One with, I assume his mom, and one I assume is his wife or partner. And both of them were saying, we got to hurry up. I don't want to be late. We got to get home in time for the game. Like, just the coolest thing to hear people talking about that. Magic gear was all over the place over on my side of town. You had car flags out, some of the flags out on houses. Like, it's been a long time since we've seen that, but people loved this team. And man, it was so fun.
Yeah, we've been around this team for a long time, and the 2019 playoffs and that run to the 2019 playoffs was really, really special. But I think we could both agree it wasn't anything like this because that team just felt like, they kind of cracked the ceiling and poked their head through before they got shoved back down to the bottom, which is, what a team like the Raptors will do. It feels like this is the start of something a lot more long-term. Like this is the beginning of I hope Magic fans never lose appreciation for how special it is to be in the playoffs, but we're going to get to that point where making the playoffs isn't enough. And it feels like this is a group that's going to do that. And I think that's the place to start because, we have this conversation every year to kind of preview the offseason and what the Magic are going to do. I think the place to start is how much does success, and the season was a wild success for this Magic team and organization, how much does success change how a team approaches an offseason? Or what a team can even do in the offseason?
Yeah, it can. So there's a few different ways to approach this. Sometimes it can be dangerous because sometimes teams think, oh man, we're there. Let's go. Like let's load all up and go crazy and make signings or make trades or trade draft picks or whatever it may be. Trade young guys and let's really make a run. And if you do that too early, you never quite get there and it never comes to fruition the way you hope. I don't have any even thought that's going to be how the Magic play this. If anything, I think it may go slightly the other way where people are like, why did you not do more? Like we're already pretty good. I just watching the way this team is operated in conversations and seeing the things that like Jeff Weltman has said publicly, he's just not a guy who's going to rush into things and he's not going to get swayed by, all right, we made the playoffs. We made a game 7. I think he knows this is not a one player away type of thing. Not right now. Maybe in a year or two, that's where this gets to with more internal growth. But I think they're going to be very patient with the way they just kind of still keep things moving. That said, there might be things that could drop in their lap here. And what's fun about that is that's where the team already being good helps. Because if it is, I'm just pulling it out of thin air because I'm going to use this one as an example because it's definitely not happening. But if Anthony Edwards was to become available, you're not trying to convince Anthony Edwards like, hey, if you came, we could be good. You're just convincing him, come here and we're already good. We'll be even better. And that's a different, it sounds like it's that much of a difference. That's like as wide as my hands are off screen as a difference between things. But now it gets hard, right? Every coach ever will say, it's not really all that hard to go from a bad team to being a good team to a great team to a contender. That's a far more difficult step to make. But guess what? We're talking about it. Like, how great is that? That's where we're kind of at with the Magic, is talking about when are we going to make that step versus, all right, who we drafting in the lottery that'll maybe save us this year. We're not having our usual conversation, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. I mean, even the way we talk about the draft, or even the draft picks from last year, coming out of the lottery last year, the Magic get Anthony Black, Jett Howard. Anthony Black was in and out of the rotation, kind of got pressed into duty early with injuries, then kind of faded out of the rotation. Jett Howard got a gap year in the G League, which is not abnormal for lottery picks anymore. Like a lot of lottery picks are doing that. Anthony Black might have been on that path if Markelle Fultz doesn't get hurt. So it's not abnormal to do that, but for a team that's so used to like just saying, "Hey, rookie, go out there and play. We've got to see what we have." It is a different mindset, and certainly now, I think what you said is absolutely correct. That the Magic can't look at themselves as saying, "Oh, we're one piece away from being a contender," but at the same time, they can look at their roster and say, "We've been in the playoffs now. We know kind of where the weak spots are on the roster." Maybe not going after the big fish. Obviously, the Magic do have cap room. We'll get into some of those numbers here in a minute. There's been rumors connecting them to like Paul George, Klay Thompson, kind of guys that are just names. And some of that I think is still that a lot of people don't know who the Magic are because they weren't on TV a lot. The kind of the introduction to them was in the playoffs. And even then it wasn't until game 6 and 7 when they were on the traditional national TV networks. Annual NBA TV series goes to the Pacers or the Magic. We all know this. But how much do the Magic still have to kind of balance what they learned from the playoffs with still being a little bit of a rebuilding team?
Yeah, I think that's where it gets a little more difficult for Jeff Weltman, because there has to be, even as patient as he is, a temptation to say, you know what, we really need shooting. Let's blow $40 million and sign Klay Thompson, right? There has to be some level of temptation for that.
You have to at least discuss it. Like, you have the opportunity, you have to at least discuss it. It's on the Rob Hennigan whiteboard.
Yeah, there it is. It has to be such a like big offer that like he can't say no to it, really. Like, we have to try to get him, because if you say, hey, you want to take 10 million, I'm fairly certain he's going to have that offered to him several other places. So I think what really becomes a spot here for the Magic is you run into a place where it is, all right, what do we want to do to shore up the things that were exposed in the playoffs? And I'll say exposed, and a lot of times people hear that word and they get upset because it has such a negative connotation. But the reality is, all it is it's some of the same stuff we knew. They need a little bit more on-ball creation. They need more shooting. And at times, the interior defense wasn't everything we wanted it to be. Okay, none of that was, I think, a real surprise. But I think some of it was, once you got in the playoffs, it was especially with those first two, oh boy, we need this. Like, we really need this. And that's where now it becomes, all right, how do we get it without going away from the things that have been kind of our hallmarks of this rebuild? The single biggest thing I've said, everybody loves to say, go get Trae Young, go get, go get another veteran point guard. And my big thing with the Magic is that I've repeatedly said is you have to be very, very careful. I don't want a point guard who's going to come in that is going to pull the ball out of Paolo and Franz's hands so much that one of the two of them is more often than not reduced to being a bystander spotting up in the corner. I think both of them could be fine in that role, but that's not what they are. Those are your guys, right? Those are the Magic's guys that we are building around. We don't need somebody coming in that reduces them, helps them, amplifies them, builds them up. Absolutely.
Make their lives easier.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Especially Paolo's, because by the end of that playoff series, he looked exhausted because he was having to do everything and hold up defensively. So get a point guard who can come in, bring the ball up the floor, get you into a set, get you kind of moving in the right direction, and then off you go from there. I think that is super important, but that doesn't need to be Trae Young, who's going to come in, eat up all the usage, and really be like, all right, go stand over there now. These are my minutes. That is where you got to be very, very careful with that kind of acquisition if that's where you want to go.
Yeah, and I think this is like what I've often said, like this offseason for the Magic is really about balance. Like they like obviously something worked this year. Like we could, criticize all the flaws and say, oh, well, they should have won game 7, or, I would honestly say a more experienced team wins game 5 and they head home with that 3-2 lead. There are a lot of things that they needed to just go through and experience and say, okay, now we've done this. We felt what this felt like. Games 1 and 2 felt like a young team and frankly, even a young coach who didn't quite understand what the playoffs are like quite yet. And once they got home, they felt that energy. They got adjusted. It was a series from there. We're going to take a quick break from our conversation with Keith Smith, tell you a little bit about LinkedIn Jobs. If I can get the right thing up here, let's find my little overlay. Where'd you go? There you go. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion with a B professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. They know small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, helping you find the exact person you need to fill that job faster too. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So why not you? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Before we get back to the show, I want to remind you all to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. A lot of those national networks are there just to provoke you. They're just there to make arguments for the sake of making arguments. They don't actually inform or tell you anything. So if you're wanting the best sports shows on the planet, I think I can say that. I'm pretty confident saying that. If you want the best analysis from local experts who know their team's best on the biggest stories in sports, you check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. It's a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you those big stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Day brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. To me, a lot, like so much of this offseason is about finding that balance of, okay, we know what works for us. And obviously, like for every team, your star is the deal. You're looking for ways to emphasize your stars. And, I think about this a lot too. The teams that are still in the playoffs, the teams that win championships, they just do something that's unique, that's just difficult to handle. The Timberwolves got the two bigs that defend, that anchor their defense. Dallas has got probably the two best on-ball scorers and creators, two of the best on-ball scorers and creators in the league. The Celtics are very similar to the Magic in a lot of ways, with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and really like 4 point guards on the floor. Now Horford, who's an excellent passer and organizer too. The Celtics are a really good model for what the Magic are trying to build in some ways. The Pacers play at that breakneck speed. And to me, like you said, keeping the ball in Paolo and Franz's hands are really, really important, because what makes the Magic unique is they have 6'2", 6'10" ball handlers. Who else in the league has that and creates those kinds of matchup issues with that? And so it's really just about understanding. I think what the Magic need is obviously just a point guard to help them get the ball in spots where they can survey a little bit more and not have to use their dribble. I mean, Paolo I thought got really good at reading where double teams were, but he was a lot better at it when he could set up at the elbow or the pinch post and look over his shoulder and see where the double was coming from before he put the ball on the ground. If he's bringing the ball up and having to organize the offense or start a pick and roll, defenses could load up against him like Cleveland did. And so I agree with you there. I think that finding a point guard this summer is the biggest need for this team. Now, we could go, through the list of who's available. D'Angelo Russell, Tyus Jones are the two names that kind of stand out to me. There's obviously been some trade talk about Anthony Simons, and we'll get into how the Magic use their cap room here in a minute. And so to me, the rest of the summer now is trying to figure out, okay, these are the needs. This is the need we have. There is no perfect fit for that need. So if you're Jeff Weltman, how do you balance making sure you fill those needs while not necessarily sacrificing what made you elite, and that is your defense, and trying to figure out, okay, who fits not only the culture of our group, which was the other hallmark of this team, was just how close and how energetic they were. You're going to have a hard time recreating that anyway, because pressures change. You got the problem of Moore coming in. How do you balance adding something while not taking away from what you've already accomplished?
Yeah, I always think back to the Knicks of a couple years ago, the pre-Jalen Brunson Knicks. They were really good that one year, right? Made the playoffs because their defense was awesome. And all everybody talked about was, yeah, but their offense isn't good enough. We got to add offense. They went out. One of their big acquisitions that offseason, old friend Evan Fournier. Well, what that did was it improved the offense a little, but it took the defense from being super special and brought it down to a range where it was just good. It just wasn't special anymore. And that's where teams, I think, make mistakes more often than not. Is you try to fix a perceived weakness and you end up hurting what makes you really special. Let's say there was a perfect offensive fit at the point guard position. I'm not going to name names because I don't even know who that would be. Let's say that guy. Let's say that guy stinks on defense, right? Let's say can't defend at all, and you're going to have to build your entire scheme around covering for them and their weaknesses. Well, now the Magic, instead of being the second-ranked defense in the league, maybe they drop into the 8 or 9 ranked defense in the league. And then the offense, instead of going from 22nd to top 10, only goes up to like the 18th best offense. That can have a huge change, right? And then all of a sudden, we're not as special. We're not winning as much. What's happened? We're better on offense. We're not winning. Oh, well, the defense got a little worse, but it's still a good defense. Yeah, but now it's not a special one. And that's, I think, where it gets to be very, very difficult. And that's where that balancing act. And that's before you touch on any of the stuff that you mentioned, which is all extremely true. Chemistry matters. I say this to people all the time. This is not fire up NBA 2K, last day of the season, Magic roster. I go into my offseason and I go trade for, I go make a trade for player X, and I signed LeBron James in free agency and all this stuff, and oh man, now all my guys are 90 plus ratings or whatever. I don't even know if that's a good rating in 2K. I honestly don't.
It's an amethyst. It's okay.
Okay, all right.
You can still play with it.
So somebody will know, but right? These guys are all super highly rated. That sounds awesome to say because you're never going to see that in real life. That can make everything go completely sideways. The NBA is not about collecting talent. It's about collecting talent that fits. And that's the challenge in front of the Magic here this summer. And I think there's a world too where some of the focus, and I don't think this is from the team side, some of the focus from the fan and the analyst side is it's so much on got to get a point guard. There are other spots on this roster that need firming up. I think honestly, as great as Paolo and Franz are, they could use one more wing. One more guy you can plug in with them that can just when they come off the floor, you don't feel it quite as much. It's a little less. I think they could use another big in the rotation. It seems like Wendell Carter's status on the team is maybe a little bit in question, but his injury history now it's real. We have to own it. He's missed quite a bit of time in the last couple of seasons. So that's something you have
He's never played more than 67 games in any season of his career. That's an issue. You need,
and if that's your high watermark, that's a little worrisome.
It's hard. It's hard. Like I made this point a lot last year. The Magic always have to have a starting capable backup center. And that's not Mo Wagner. I love Mo Wagner, but the Magic had the fourth highest scoring bench in the league last year, at least in the regular season. Their depth was a strength, but I would agree. I would argue their depth is actually something they need to work on. We're going to take one more break to tell you a little bit more about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. The way I describe this Magic team is they're kind of like a house of cards. When everything's lined up perfectly, it's beautiful. It works really, really well. But if you take away one piece, the thing starts to wobble and sometimes it collapses. And, like all young teams, like they would throw Caleb Houston in there. He'd have some good games. He'd have a lot of bad games. They'd throw Chuma Okeke in there. He was Chuma Okeke. They never trusted Cole Anthony to be a starter. They throw Anthony Black in there. He holds the boat steady. Goga Bitadze holds the boat steady. But it was always kind of, I know they were in there when they won 9 straight in November, but that was November. It always felt a little rickety, and I think we saw in the playoffs that yes, the Magic should have won a lot with their depth in the playoffs, and that really didn't happen. And you could just kind of feel like, even though Jamal Mosley still insisted on playing an all bench lineup, which was frustrating, but that's who this team was. They went with what got them there. It clearly wasn't enough to get them over the finish line.
Yeah, and that's part of that, playing the all-bench lineup. That's part of – this was Jamal Mosley's first playoffs too. He's learning. He figured it out. I thought he went to that less as the series went along.
He pulled it quicker, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think that is very good to see because that is learning the difference between the playoffs and the regular season. On a regular season game, I feel so bad for doing this, but on a Tuesday night in Charlotte in January, you could play your bench for 25 minutes in a game together and probably be fine against a team, even a team that's not super team like Cleveland, but a good playoff team. You can't do that. You're going to get yourself into some trouble. I think with the Magic, I know we're going to get into the cap space and kind of the numbers a little bit more here in a second, but there are worlds where I think people may get like, oh, I thought Mo Wagner would stick around if they decline his team option for $8 million. I don't think that has anything to do with him staying or going. I think that's just, hey, we need cap space. We're going to keep you. We're going to figure out how to keep you. But for now, you got to go. We're not going to go that route. And then they'll figure that out and get him back in the fold one way or another. I think Cole Anthony never started because I think the Magic's read, which I think is the correct one. And I think the way they paid him as an extension is he is a backup guard who can provide some scoring punch. And you know what? That is fine. That is not a bad thing. Sometimes people are like, they only see this guy as a backup. And we're 5 years into his career now. We're 4 years in. This will be year 5 coming up. That's what he is. And that's okay. Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford had decade-long or almost 2 decade-long careers by coming off the bench and being absolutely awesome at it. I'm not saying Cole Anthony's at that level, but I'm not going to rule out that he can't get there where he's competing for 6th man of the year type things. And he was paid like a 6th man of the year. Now, there's a world where I think what would make the fan base absolutely livid if it was, let's just more or less run it back, a tweak here, a tweak there. We use enough of the cap space because they have to, but we use it on things like, let's re-sign Gary Harris again. Let's bring back Markelle Fultz. And then they rely on, all right, but Anthony Black will be better in year 2. And honestly, I think Anthony Black was pretty good compared to what the expectations were in year 1. I thought he shot it better than I thought he would. I like later in the year, he was letting it fly without really thinking about it, because early in the year it was catch it, and man, it was record scratch. Everything stops. Everybody stops dancing. And it's like, dude, you have to do something. You can't just catch it and kill all the flow here. By the end of the year, he's either shooting it or he's putting it on the floor, making a move. I love his size at the position. I think he's going to be really good eventually. Jett Howard, we'll see. But if you go 1 for 2, not the end of the world with those picks. You've already hit on a lot of other picks. So I think for me, it becomes very much about let's get the right kind of fits in here versus necessarily like, I see people say, well, they should go trade for Zach LaVine. He wants to trade. He would come in and fill a need right away. Yeah, I guess, but it's probably not where I would go, and I don't think it's where they're going to go. If it is, go get Anthony Simons, I start to get a whole lot more interested in that. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, he makes half the money Zach LaVine makes. He has an injury history, but it's not the scary injury history that Zach LaVine has. And then there's, well, could they be a team that trades for Donovan Mitchell? Well, if you're going to do that, you better make sure he's coming. Not coming, but he's staying rather.
Yeah.
And then could they go get Darius Garland if that goes that way? Sure. There are a lot of options I like. I even had somebody say, hey, could they do Jimmy Butler if that really falls apart there? I mean, I guess I mean, sure, in theory, I suppose they could go that direction. Do I love that? No, not really. I don't think that's a move that the Magic are needing to make right now. But sure, the biggest thing, there are a million options that they can go. And a big part of that is because, one, still got guys on rookie scale contracts, and your best guys are on their rookie scale contracts. And 2, your other contracts, they've done a very good job leaving themselves very protected with those contracts as a team. They have no bad contracts on the books, nothing even approaching it. And that's really, really important for team building moving forward.
I want to thank Keith for joining the show and giving us a lowdown on his perspective of the Orlando Magic from the cap side as the Magic prepare for a very, very busy offseason. Be sure to join us again on Monday, a special Memorial Day episode. I'll actually post it Sunday afternoon, so Sunday late afternoon, so you will get early jump on it. We will go over how the Magic can use their cap room, what their cap options are, how the new TV deal affects them, extension talks, everything about a lot more specifics about the Magic offseason. We're going to get to that on Monday's episode in part 2 of this conversation. So definitely tune into that. You can check out all of Keith's work at Spotrac, SPOTRAC.com. Like he will tell you on Monday. He's doing team-by-team reviews, has not gotten to the Magic yet. He says he's expecting that to come out next week. Plus free agency rankings, profiling every single available free agent in the NBA this summer. It's obviously a big summer for the Orlando Magic, so we're very, very eager to see what Keith has to say and very, very eager to see what the Magic ultimately do. Like I said, there's a lot of decisions that Jeff Weltman has to make. It's a big offseason for the Orlando Magic, but we're going to get to all that on Monday's episode of Locked On Magic. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the listening podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Go search for Locked On Magic or go to youtube.com/@LockedOnMagic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And also be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, for even more Orlando Magic content, including some previews of articles going up on Orlando Magic Daily. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Again, that's patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. That's going to do it for me today. I want everyone to have a great Memorial Day weekend. We will see you back here Monday to finish our conversation with Keith Smith. While you're doing that, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. You can find that on Amazon Fire TV or in the free or on YouTube as well. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.